Bonnie Hammer is the former vice chair of NBC Universal, where she spent decades running the most high pressure, male dominated rooms in entertainment. Now she's stepping forward with a new book, 15 Lies Women Are Told at Work and the Truth We Need to Succeed, where she calls out the advice that sounds empowering, like just work hard, know your worth, your work speaks for itself, that can actually keep women small, silent, and stuck. Hi, Bonnie. I'm so happy to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
That's my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to chatting.
Me too. I feel like you are a wealth of knowledge for the women out there. I mean, we just mentioned the male dominated rooms that you've worked in the entertainment industry. And I know you've just had this unbelievable career starting from the assistant position up into what was called the queen of cable at one point. But when you look back, I wanna know, what do you think actually set you apart to have such success in such a male-dominated world?
I think there were a couple of things. I mean, I think it starts. Well, if I really go back, I think it starts with my dad. And my
Okay.
dad, as I was growing up, because he was a Russian immigrant, his only thing to me and to my brother were there's no such word as can't. If you can't do something, you're simply not trying hard enough. So I started with that. And then as a young kid, I went to summer camp. And I went when I was really, really young. So my mom had a heart attack and my father didn't know what to do with me. So he was friends with some owners of the camp up in the Catskills, what was known as the Borscht Belt at the time. And I wasn't six yet. And I was at sleepaway camp with a bunch of kids and luckily a family that at least knew me. And I learned at a very, very early age how to work with other people or kids, how to be a team player, how to collaborate, how to kind of, in a sense, though it wasn't a room, it was an ugly bunk with no air conditioner or a fan, kind of read the room of the kids because being the youngest, I had to figure out how to fit in.
Mhm.
I think that really helped me navigate much, much later in life. And I don't think I realized any of it till hindsight set in. And I started looking back on why I made certain decisions, how I got where I did, and why. So a lot of this is in hindsight in terms of how or why I think I succeeded in a very crazy, at the time I was growing up in a male dominated world. And I owe a lot to my dad and to early experiences about knowing how to get along and knowing how to see what was going on in front of me and not having to either I didn't have to own the success of winning in a game. I gave it away to others because it was better, nicer. It showed a bit of humility, which I see now that I probably did it out of insecurity. But
Mhm.
they're all tools that I turned into strengths later on in life.
Yeah, I mean, you're referencing when you were 6, so this starts really early for us, which is always something we talk about on this podcast, kind of the programming that we start to, put into our own lives and in our own processes that we don't even realize that we're doing. So if you started at 6, learning how to work with the group or turning over the winning, how did that play into your early days of starting in the TV business?
I think what happens with a lot of us, whether we are willing to admit it or not, for me, I was very insecure when I was young. And because I was in my early, early days at camp, younger than everybody else in the room. And then I skipped a grade at one point. So again, I was a year younger. I think I always felt a little insecure. And that insecurity drove some oddly positive things. I would be watchful of other people because I didn't want to try to compete. I learned to be humble and have a little humility so people would want me in their group rather than me being the young one trying to prove myself and, be arrogant about something. So they would even, tease me more. I think a lot of stuff started by being a little insecure and not having the confidence. And as I grew up, I realized that was like a phenomenal tool that
Mhm.
you really define it later in life. It's true humility. It's being humble. It's being willing to give the wins to somebody else. And it shows you what happens if you can work with others, play with others, give other people the kudos for doing something good. It creates a loyalty, creates a sense of team, a sense of collaboration, and people want to be around you. And in my case, wanted to work for me.
Mhm.
And that really helped a lot. So these, it was an incredible tool.
Yeah. Well, so when I first was listening to you say these things and then also just thinking about that in my head, I thought, oh, well, these are lies that she probably believed that she needed to play a part of. But one of the main things that kept coming up when I was researching for this podcast was your mentality about women actually taking things that we should look at as skill sets that we have, which is what I'm hearing in this talk of being humble, and we look at them as weakness, right? Because of the way our society has developed. I don't typically love to like hate on men for being one way and women for being another. I think it's the way we have looked at success over the last couple of years has been in a male dominated field that has been defined by some of those energies. And maybe that's shifting a little bit. Can you speak to that though, of what you see women like really dismissing within ourselves that are skill sets we can bring to the workplace?
Two things about what you just said.
Okay.
One was in order to support women or ourselves, we don't have to necessarily put down the guys.
Yes.
If they play the game one way, women play it the other.
Yes.
Or what women do, which is problematic, they don't own what is really part of the DNA or the chemistry of women. We are natural caregivers.
Mhm.
Our our chromosomes, our body types, basically, create hormones that are very, very positive. We, as caregivers, as people who have children, we learn how to play a game very differently than the guys, but too often we look at that as weaknesses,
Mhm.
warmth, caregiving, collaboration, taking care of things, being a detail person, juggling stuff. We don't necessarily believe these things are strengths, when in
Right.
fact, incredible strengths. When you think about how men and women differ in terms of disagreements, men want to win the war. Women kind of want to bury the hatchet. They just
Mhm.
want it over with and want to move ahead. And again, unfortunately, both society and some workplaces look at that as weakness when it's a phenomenal strength and how to negotiate a win win as opposed to have to be the winner. There are so many things in our world that we view as weaknesses for women, especially
Mhm.
warmth, collaboration, sympathy, empathy, things that create loyalty, which are phenomenal strengths in the workplace, but we don't own the credit for it.
Yeah. Well, I think even the talking about being humble, and you said so many people wanted to work for you. And I was thinking about, I'm in a freelance position, so I have various bosses. And it's so interesting because the ones that I want to do my best work, that I'm really dedicated to that, are the ones that make it a team effort when we win. And I wondered if there was one particular lesson that you could speak to about that kind of thing, about being the boss or being in a position of power and how we've kind of I don't know, set ourselves up for failure in these ways of the team winning and the whole company winning by maybe that person not taking all of the credit. Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask you?
I know exactly what you're talking
Okay.
about. That for me, first of all, not many leaders understand that ultimately, if your team, if your show, if your product, whatever it is, makes it, regardless who has the credit or
Mhm.
you credit to or the world does, it's ultimately your win.
Right.
You can sit back, just kind of bask quietly in the success. So for me, I never had to take the credit for anything. I try to hire really good people around me. And when I hired, if I were to hire Kelly, it would be okay, is she great at her skill set? Does she know what she's doing? But in an interview, I would want to see how often you gave credit to someone else. I would want to see or hear, is she talking just about herself or is she asking questions? I want to look at how you deal or navigate in your former world, the present world, and how you deal with me to understand if you're a team player. And that would be as important, sometimes more important in terms of my hiring you for our team, because I really wanted people who are team players. Because if we win, we all win. And anybody who thinks producing a show, creating a show, creating a channel, if you will, is a single person's job, they're not. It
Mhm.
really takes a huge team to get it done, and you have to be in sync. I never wanted one person in a room and I had everybody read scripts, even if they were finance people. You read the script, I want your opinion. We're going to take notes, put it up on our little chalkboard, and talk about why you liked it, why you didn't like it. It doesn't matter that you're not a creative. Can you relate to it? So it got people invested in the
Mhm.
product. So then they become the person, instead of saying, you're over budget, their approach will be, let's figure out how we can manipulate this budget to make the show work. They were invested. So for me, it was really important to have team players in every aspect of a job, creating a culture that was supportive of one another rather than people raising their hands and said, I did that. I should get the
Right.
credit. I want that.
Right.
So I think if I had, and it's funny, later in my career, I heard once or twice that, you know, Bonnie's teams, she has a cult. And I would always say, it's not a culture, off by three letters. It's a culture.
Mhm.
And people they wanted to continue working with one another. I had people on my teams for, multiple decades
Right.
because they were happy. They got the credit for stuff. They were well paid, but they felt good about what they did.
Mhm.
I also broke rules that created some loyalty. And it's funny that I can admit now, but I couldn't really talk about it at the time. When any of the women on my teams had a kid, I made a quiet deal with them that they had a 4-day work week. They're getting paid for 5. That whenever I needed them, I needed them. Other than that, I wanted them home early. I want them to do what they needed to do to take care of their family, etc. But I never told up in management. To me, it was really important because I did not have that. And I
Mhm.
remembered how pulled I was and the loyalty that something as simple as that created for the women who worked with and for me was incredible. All they
Mhm.
wanted to do was give back because they had such freedom. And
Right.
I never cared where they were, and I never wanted them to lie to me. If they were going to a kid's softball game, just tell me where you're going. Don't pretend you're going to a meeting. My thing would be great, fine. Or it's today's not a good day to do that. We're under a lot of pressure. And it worked.
Yeah. Do you find those to be qualities that a female leader might be able to exhibit more than a male leader?
I do because I think many women in any industry are juggling. And even though guys have families, they usually have someone at home taking care of everything.
Mhm.
We, as the caregivers, even if we have a nanny or we have help at home, we're still primarily the mother. And it is innate in us that we feel we have to juggle and are responsible for everything. So I think the empathy level, the degree of commitment to it is harder. And we are juggling more, even if we refuse to admit it publicly or, when we're in the room in a meeting with everybody, it's still something that's on our minds.
Mhm.
I remember once going to a elementary school meeting with whoever we had to meet with at the time, and my kid was probably in second grade. And I got reprimanded back then. We're talking about many years ago. He's 32 now. But it was your working mom. So I got reprimanded because I asked for a 7:15, one of the guys' meeting times, because I had to make a train to get to the city to get to work. And the principal actually gave me a little bit of a lecture about being a working mom in those days, to the point that I got on the train and I started crying and told my husband from the train, saying, I don't know if I can do this. And it was a lecture. about being a working mom.
which a man would never get.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
I do really respect hearing a female or a woman leader that was such a big proponent of team building and being a team player. I think that a lot of women are kind of brought up in this scarcity mindset of if I want, she can't have. And there's only so many spaces for each of us. And I really respect the fact that you talk about being a leader from this place of no, we're all in the same team. So, is that something you really felt like you had to buck against even more as a woman?
You hit something very, very important that unfortunately still exists.
Mhm.
I'm not sure why it didn't envelop me in the same way, but I always felt it was very important for me to have women on my team, very strong women. And my teams were always at least half women. And
Mhm.
it was interesting. It was probably half women of the guys, half the guys were gay. And it made for a really fun, collaborative, great team. But the one thing I've realized, which is very, very hard because it's not going away,
Mhm.
too many women who are succeeding right now do not support other women to the degree that they have to, simply because their belief is if there's only one seat at the table, I want to get it. And if
Mhm.
I bring up others or if I support other women to too great a degree, they may get it and I won't. And what they don't understand is until we have more women in the C suites, nothing's going to change. And it doesn't mean that guys shouldn't be there and there shouldn't be equal representation for everyone. I really believe in that. But women need to support other women rather than be competitive with them, negatively competitive with them, because it's just going to hurt everybody.
Mhm.
And I do think it's because of the scarcity of those positions, as opposed to just human nature of women just wanting to compete. I think
Mhm.
it's just fear. If they bring someone else up, it means they have less of a chance of getting there. And it's bullshit. And I
Yeah.
really think other women need to support other women because the more women in the C suites, the better off we're all going to be in terms of building teams, in terms of empathy, in terms of loyalty, in terms of the traits that we possess.
Mhm. How do we get over that threat feeling though? I actually really resonate with the way that you operate because to me, it's always been a mentality of the more of us there is, the more impact we have. But I've just really faced in my life the opposite, where the higher I got, the more people, specifically women, I felt would want to tear me down. And that was always shocking to me. So, how do we let go of that threat?
I think part of it is negatively confronting it is not going to work, but it's almost it's almost like a reverse humiliation. It's basically saying, you know, confronting in a kind way, saying, why are you being, I'm trying to work together with you. What can I do to help you? Part of it is figuring out what their agenda is and figuring out how to get a yes from them that helps you and helps them at the same time.
Mm.
So for me, it's a piece of reading the room. Why is she reacting that way to me? Is she
Mhm.
threatened by me? Is she threatened by something I've done? Is she threatened only because she doesn't think that she wants competition for that role that she envisions up there? And figuring out a way to kind of read her and get her to support your agenda while you support hers, almost kind of de-threatening her
Mm.
by figuring out what you can do to help her out rather than building up more of a wall and a resentment to her that just feeds into her cause.
Mhm.
And my thing is trying to break other people down so they see I'm not a threat and I really want to work with them. And if I try a couple of times and it doesn't work, then I just chalk it off the board and say, something not going to happen. Fine, fine. But I usually give people the benefit of the doubt once or twice, try to figure out what their agenda is, try to see if we can figure out how to get our agendas together and work together or help one another. If it doesn't work, at least I know I've tried.
Right. You've given it the effort. Well, let's talk a little bit about the book. It's called 15 Lies Women Are Told at Work. Obviously, you have tons of experience from all of the years in the entertainment industry and even the positions of leadership that we've just been discussing. I need to know, though, what made you want to write all of these down and put into a book?
It's a good question. First of all, it was a pandemic.
Okay.
So I was, for the first time in my life, not commuting to New York, back and forth. So I had like 4 extra hours in a day.
hmm
So I had the time. So
Mm,
that was available. The other thing was, I was at a point in my career where I really felt I wanted to figure out a way to pay things forward.
mm,
How do I help, the women who worked with and for me or in the company that even if they don't work for me, they knew they can come to me for advice is one thing. But how do I reach out to others and in a sense create a mentor in a pocket so I could pay it forward to other women who are younger trying to negotiate, and navigate the path to growing in a business, in any business, not just media. I also thought it would be good for guys too, but unfortunately, Simon and Schuster said, no, we want it for women. So we need to market it. Therefore, it's going to be women as
right.
opposed to guys. But a lot of men have read the book and they've been really appreciative of it as well. So it was wanting to figure out a way to help others in a broader way than just basically mentoring those that I see every day at work. And then also realizing if I had listened to so many of these cliches
Mhm.
when I was younger, I think I would have fallen flat on my face and no way in hell succeeded. So I started thinking through all the cliches that we have been brought up to believe from, the basic ones, follow your dreams, to you can have it all, to find friends in high places. And each one that I went through was, no, that's wrong. That's
Right.
wrong. And to me, it was like, how do I create a manual for success? Because if people believe these cliches, it is self sabotage. So to simplify it, I got, okay, so what is the uncommon common sense that women need to succeed
Mm.
as opposed to a manual of bullshit? And the other thing I realized was there's so many advice books out there, but so few books about bad advice.
Oh, I've never thought of that. That's so true.
Yeah. It's, everyone's giving advice, but no one's knocking the bad advice that we're getting.
Right. Right. Well, and the way the book is set up is so brilliant because you say the myth, which like follow your dreams, and then you say the truth, and that's obviously coming from all of these years of experience. Can we
Yeah.
use the follow your dreams for an example to tell the listeners just kind of how this book is set up? So you say follow your dreams is the myth, and then the truth was
Follow the opportunities.
follow the opportunities. Yes, explain that a little bit.
Well, we've all been brought up with since we're little kids, whether it's our parents or a school teacher, or a grandparent whispering in our ears, if you follow your passion, you're never going to work a day in your life. But the reality is, you can't be what you can't see. You can't dream what you don't know. So following your dreams can actually be nightmare advice
Mhm.
because you're learning something at the age of 6 and 7 that gets ingrained in your brain cells. You have no clue what that really means in real life. And even if it comes to you on your own when you're 6 years old, playing baseball, oh, I want to be, baseball star, or a course you took in high school, you still have no idea what that really means in real life. And until you get to a point where you can experience a variety of things, you really have no clue what that adult dream will turn out to be that's actually doable. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? It's going to determine whether you're going to want to work at home or you're going to need a big environment. You don't know that as a child or even as a young adult, especially these days when so many people are saying, oh, yes, you can work remotely. Is that how you want to live your life? Or do you want to be in the room where things are happening? So you have to experience a whole lot of different things in order for you to find out what you're good at, what makes you happy, what fits your personality, what you can succeed at. And you're not going to find that in a dream. It
Right.
doesn't mean that for me, for example, my dream was photography. And I, went to school for it. I was in photojournalism. And then in between undergraduate and graduate, I had 4 different photo jobs. And each one I hated. One was in the dark room, and my lovely manicured nails at the time would turn yellow from the hypo and the chemicals of
Nobody
those.
wants that.
And then I graduated to be with a commercial photographer in his studio, but everything was artificial. It was artificial light, artificial flowers, artificial water on the flower. And I realized, oh, I like Cartier Bresson. I want the decisive moment. So, and then I was a photo editor, taking photographs that I would connect other people's photographs to other people's words. That was boring.
Right.
So I ended up realizing that photography was a passion, but it wasn't something that was going to make me a living and make it a
Mhm.
happy living. So the reality is, you can have a passion, but it doesn't have to be your boss.
Mhm.
Find out what you can do, what you like doing in a work world that fits your personality, and keep that other thing. It doesn't mean you're throwing it away, but it doesn't have to be your paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah, I always get so upset when I talk to, high schoolers and they're thinking, "Oh, at 18, I've gotta decide what I wanna do with the rest of my life," because in my experience, that has evolved so much, and in fact, I used to feel a little bit of shame about that because I wasn't one of those people that knew what they wanted to do for the rest of their life at 10 years old or something like that. I used to think that meant
Okay.
I wasn't as talented. But the truth is like this job that I'm doing right now, this didn't even exist when I was in college. So how would I have known? But another thing you talk about being so important in your adult life in the work world is knowing how to adapt and change and really like letting go of some of these things that we just have deemed as the way that needs to go and then that shifting and then feeling like that's a failure, but instead looking at that as like a new opportunity. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Exactly. What you're saying is 100% true. There are a couple of pieces of that. As we said, you can't be what you can't see.
Mhm.
How do you know about podcasts before it existed? It didn't
Right,
exist until you get exposed to it later on in life. And
right.
once you're open to it, it would have just been a bygone. There's
Mhm,
no way I want to try that because it wasn't my passion. But the thing that I think affects everybody, male and female, but I think female a little bit more, is change
mhm,
and the ability to embrace change and not run from it. It is more often threatening than positive and optimistic. But the truth is, the only thing that is constant in life is change, regardless of your age, your stage, your wage. It's going to come at you. So you might as well embrace it and use that as a stepping stone to your next step. When I talk about opportunities, when you think about what the world is like right now, if you have an idea of what you want to do and you climb a ladder,
mhm,
get to a certain place, and then there's a ceiling. There's nowhere else you can go because you get to the top of that space and it's gone. I look at opportunities as the way to create a spider web where you keep trying different things. And then eventually you're going to find something you love, but
mm,
you have such a great skill set that, for example, when AI comes and your job goes away, you have other things to fall back on because you
mhm.
didn't just go on a singular path. It gives you such breadth as opposed to a ladder, which you hit a ceiling, that you can almost do anything and everything because you're willing to try things. You're willing to experiment. You're willing to test yourself out. And it gives you such great opportunities that you'll always be able to find something to fit into because you're not narrow. You're not defined by one skill set.
I feel like we are living out right now one of the beautiful qualities that a female leader would have, and that is giving yourself grace and walking with yourself through life versus saying, "It is this path." It's like we're letting go of the structure a little bit, and, like, that's what I hear you saying a lot is kind of learning how to flow with the way that life goes, and
Exactly.
isn't that the way that life works?
Yes, whether people think that if they are rigid and can stay in a lane, they're going to automatically get or eventually get where they want to go. The reality is, it makes you so rigid
Mhm.
that you aren't open to other people, other opportunities. You're going to miss out on meeting people who can take you in a whole other direction. You know, enjoying life that you would have never expected because you were too fearful of trying it. It opens up so many different doors if you just are willing to experiment, to
Mhm.
try things, realize you're going to trip, you're going to fail, and it's okay. Get up, dust yourself off, and try something else. But don't look at it again, don't look at it as a failure. Look at it as, all right, don't love that. Let's move on.
Yeah, I think that's such a big lesson. Well, we talk about burnout a lot on this podcast, and I went through a really big season of it, and my listeners walked through me with that. I'm curious if you being in such I mean, that job to me sounds so demanding, and I know you have a family as well, and so did you ever feel like there was a point where you were losing yourself to the grind and not being able to balance in the way that you said you would give even your female employees kind of that grace?
Um, you never feel balanced. I
Yeah,
don't care
okay.
what anybody says when they're
Yeah.
living in the moment or looking back at it. If you are truthful, especially if you're a woman with a family, you are never in balance. You are always feeling you're cheating on something. When I would be at work, I always felt I was cheating on my kids. When I was on vacation, I always thought I was cheating on my colleagues that I left in the workplace, taking over what I wasn't doing for that week or 2 weeks. It is, you know, it is by nature something that you have to come to terms with, that you're always going to feel out of balance. And only in hindsight will you believe you succeeded in having it all. That when you're living through it, you're always going to feel somehow that you're giving up or not hurting somebody, but letting somebody down, either in the workplace or outside. But when people realize that that's normal and
Mhm.
that's okay, is when it's healthy. When it gets into your system to a degree where you can't lose it, that's when I worry. But that's usually when people don't realize that every other woman with a family who is in a position is feeling the same way. And it's okay,
Right.
okay to feel that way because that's how it is.
Yeah. When you got to your final position and you were, I would say, at the top, what did confidence feel like? What did that look like for you in a manner of confidence? Did it feel any different from any other time in your life? Or is there always kind of the same energy of, I want to do the best that I can. I'm kind of striving to chase these things. I'm working on the balance of my balancing my family and my work life. What did it feel like?
I mean, it's a complicated question because I don't think anyone ever feels that they're at a point where they can't learn more or can't do better
Mhm.
or can't even succeed further. I think that's always somehow out in the ether. But for me, the difference was once I got to a certain place and when I was of a certain age, I became agenda free. I no longer was navigating my work way or anything else I was doing with a specific agenda in mind. I got to a point where all I wanted to do was the right thing, whether it was for my team, for a project, for the boss, whatever. I wasn't looking for more money. I wasn't looking for the next position. I wasn't looking to take over the world. You become comfortable in your own skin that you literally are doing things for all the right reasons, not for any other reason of growth, money, anything else other than because you believed it was the way to go. And that to me was incredible freedom. That it was when I looked at a situation, I wasn't trying to figure out whether the decision I was making for any other reason than the purity of the decision. Was it the right decision for the team, for the project, for whatever, as opposed to well, if we do this, we'll get another show. Or if we work with that company, well, no, there was no agenda other than for this thing that I'm making a decision about, or for this person, or for the team. Is this the right thing to do?
Mhm.
And to me, that was very freeing.
Mhm. I can't remember where I read this about you, but I remember reading something that said you have said now that you really just wanna be in service to others at this stage of your life, and I wondered what success looks like for you now, because it sounds like it probably looks very different.
Well, I don't even think I would use the word success anymore.
Okay.
That so much more with navigating a work world.
Mhm.
I think contentment. I think um, a different kind of happiness, freedom in a lot of ways. But for me, it's about paying it forward. It's giving back. I have been very lucky. I have had an amazing career working with and for some amazing people, having some incredible mentors. And I've been very lucky. It's not to say I didn't work my butt off, but it takes more than just work.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of luck and it takes a lot of people to kind of help you get where I ultimately got to. And I want to help others kind of get to that place. I want to be a mentor to, those who worked with me before, even though I'm not technically with NBC anymore. I'm still getting calls every single week, people wanting to know how to navigate a certain situation, being that companies are being restructured now. And it just gives me great happiness to be able to help them again because I have no stake in it. So
Right.
whatever advice I'm giving them is pure.
Mhm.
There's no reason I'd be telling them to go in one direction over another, other than I believe it to be the right thing for them at that moment. Where years ago, you couldn't, it was never completely clean. There was
Right.
always another agenda, or is it good for this team? Am I losing them? Are they going to somewhere else? It wasn't as, this is freeing and it's part of being agenda free, but also it's pure.
Mm.
And you can't, it takes a long time in your life to get back to that purity. It's almost as if when we were very young, and even starting out in the work business, we didn't know anything else other than the purity of trying to be or get where we wanted to go. There was no other motivation because we didn't know there needed to be.
Right.
I almost feel I'm back at that stage of a young kid that has no other motivation other than to try to do the right thing.
Right.
So it's a purity. It's a purity and
Yeah.
freedom.
I know you mentioned the word mentor, and another thing you talk about is the importance of the truth teller as the mentor, not just someone who's going to kind of tell you what you want to hear or the nice thing of how good of a job you're doing that's going to shoot you straight. Can you speak to that? Because I think that is the opposite of what most of us seek when we're looking for a mentor.
I think we've been brought up to believe that mentors are cheerleaders. They're the people who are going to pat you on the back, or the people who are going to say, "Oh, you're so good. Keep going. Just get in there."
Right.
Oh, and it's those are lovely to have. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't have some cheerleaders around them, but I'm a huge believer in what I call the challenging mentor. They're the tough love person. They put the word tough in tough love. They're truth tellers. They're sparring partners. They're foils. They're the people who they teach you that you can do things that you don't believe you can do yourself. They are the ones who really get you into the game in a very different way. The way I look at it is supportive cheerleader, mentor types, they kind of are cheering you on at the game.
Mm,
But the challenging mentor doesn't just prepare you for the game, they help you win the war because
mm,
they basically are going to push you to your limits. They're going to tell you the truth about, how you react to a situation or if a job is good enough. And I had one of the, I think, challenging mentors at a very good stage of my life because I think I was right for it. I was just about ready. but also not up there to such a degree that I would fight it. But I
Mhm.
also wasn't so soft that it would kill me. And that was Barry, or is to this day, Barry Diller. And Barry taught me how to think. Barry challenged everything I did, everything I said. And it took me about 18 months for working for this guy to crawl out from under the table and being willing to go toe to toe with him. But that's the only thing he respected. And I followed a guy who was working for him who I kind of enjoyed the way they sparred. Say, well, Steve can do it. I should be able to do this too. So I remember the first time when Barry would, because we were in a like a board meeting sized room and all the people who reported to him. And I threw out an idea. And Barry literally said, Hammer, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I mean, he would be that gruff. These days,
You could
HR would
never get
get it,
away with that, right?
which I think is bad. And I think a lot of the younger generation are getting hurt by the over wokeness of HR
Yeah.
departments these
Yeah.
days. And I was able to say to him, Barry, shut up, sit down. And if you don't listen to me, you're going to be stupid. And he went, oh, okay. That was the turning point of our relationship.
Wow.
And whether it was a show idea I was thinking about, he would make me think out every detail of why it would. For one example, I was trying to do a show about a psychic on the Sci-Fi Channel.
I would have loved this show.
And so this was John Edward.
Oh, I know John Edwards, yes.
That was John. And it was before John was John. This
Okay.
was in the 90s.
Okay.
And so I remember, and this was before iPhones or anything else. So if you're at a computer doing email, you were sitting at your computer.
Right.
Friday afternoon, Barry texts me, emails me and says, talk to me about doing this show with a psychic. Okay, what do you want to know? All right. His question to me was, if psychics are real, why is he on the Sci-Fi Channel? If psychics are not real, why the fuck are we in business with this guy? And so I
Valid.
all long we go back and forth till
Yeah.
it was like 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. And when Barry's emailing you, you do not leave the computer. You don't say, I'll talk to you on Monday all weekend long. So finally, I said, all right, I'm going to give this one more shot and then I'm over it. Sorry, John, you're not getting a show. The email went something like, okay, Barry, whether you believe psychics are real or I believe psychics are real is completely irrelevant. It's in the mind and the eyes of the beholder.
Mhm.
Therefore, it's neither fact nor fiction. It's something I'm going to call friction. What better for the Sci-Fi Channel? He writes back, okay, your arguments win. Go.
And the show was made.
Yeah. But
Wow.
that's how much he pushed you and challenged you.
Wow.
That would never happen these days.
No.
And if somebody didn't want the show, they would just say no. But it really taught me how to think and analyze. And it went through every single thing I did under Barry. Taken, the show about aliens with Steven Spielberg, went through the same kind of challenge. And that became the #1 show for sci-fi. So I'm a huge believer in people being willing to hear stuff that might not feel good at the moment.
Mhm.
Sit back and listen and take in what you can. Why are they saying it? And what are they saying it and why are they saying it? And 90% of the time, it's not because somebody wants to hurt you or make you feel bad. 90% of the time, if you're willing to listen, is because they want you to be better.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about that story that you just told as well is that by him challenging you, you actually had to own your truth about John Edwards in the show even more, which then
Yeah.
makes you more passionate about the project. You want that to succeed. And we really kind of can put our energy behind the things that we believe in. I think once we're forced to actually say it. But so often in our world, we're just moving and taking actions and not thinking about it or being conscious of the whys, you know? And so he
Right.
forced you into really defining your whys, which is only gonna help you and the entire project.
Yeah. And he did that with everything.
Yeah.
And would also listen to, he would support support you if you thought it through. We had another issue with scheduling this limited series called Taken. And
Mhm.
it was the beginning of Dakota Fanning's career. She was 9 years old at the time. And it was a complicated but lovely, only a Spielberg can do, a 20-hour limited series about alien abduction. And it was very heartwarming. And right before the show was going to air in December, and it was going to be literally like the 1980s limited series, it was going to, and it was before streaming. So it was, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 2 hours a night, and then repeat the next week. And then we would take over the whole schedule. We would repeat the Monday show on Tuesday, the Tuesday show would have Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday would have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And we just took over the channel. So late September, the ad sales group came down on me and said, "We want you to air this as a regular series. We can't sell it as a limited series. So do it in January and have it be a weekly." And the whole idea, the way the whole show was built, was to be a nightly show that built over 2 weeks. So I had to go back to Barry and I said, "Listen, I'm getting a lot of pressure. You're going to hear it. I don't want to just go ahead without your support. This is what's going on." He goes, "Send me the first episode." I said, "Okay." So I sent him the first episode of the series that was going to start in December, by now January. And he wrote back, I saved this email in like 24-point type in blue and orange. And it was, I just remember this to such a degree. It's always stuck with me. "Honey, if all of your episodes are as gluely compelling, I think you have a hit on your hand. Fuck them."
There you go.
But he would support what he believed if you believed in it.
Mhm.
But he would push you if your logic wasn't straight. So to me, get anybody, find someone who is going to challenge you and just go with it. They're not
Mm.
trying to hurt you. They're just trying to make you better than you even think you can be.
Right. Well, if you're speaking as a mentor with your book to all of these women in the world, what do you want them to leave after they've read the book, just knowing deep in their bones? What's your one truth?
Oh, my one truth would be pretty much that, just starting like with my dad. Um, There's no such word as count, and you can do anything you want to do, be anything you want to be. But it's just figuring out a way to navigate your way there and not
Mm,
let anything get in the way. And it's believing in the uncommon common sense as opposed to the BS that you're going to hear from many others.
mm, I love that. The book is called 15 Lies Women Are Told at Work and the Truth We Need to Succeed. I will put the link for the book in the description of this podcast as well for you guys. So we'll get you all Bonnie's information. Thank you so much. I learned so much. I'm going to go back and listen to this and take notes for myself. So it was very, very helpful. And I really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us today.
And it's my pleasure. You're a delight to chat with, and I look forward to more conversations.
Thank you. Thank you guys for listening.